Hello and welcome to This Week at Charlestown Road, a branch of the Heaven Bound podcast. My name is Jason Harden. I'm here with Roger Schaus, and this is where we reflect on the weekend that was. We dig a little deeper into a recent sermon to give you something to think about as this week unfolds and preview what's to come this next weekend at Charlestown Road. Roger, here at home, we have been focused throughout the first several months of this year on the seasons of faith. And several weeks ago, you talked with us about lions in the winter. That sermon is still freely available at charlestownroad.org. There's an easy search bar. If our listeners didn't have the opportunity to watch or listen, Lions in the Winter, absolutely worth going back and revisiting. But this past Sunday, I sense a theme, Lions in the Spring.
Yeah, absolutely. That first one we did back in the first quarter of the year was focusing upon how the devil, as a lion, 1 Peter 5, verse 8, is a roaring lion seeking someone to devour, how he tempts and attacks the mature Christian. And I think that's an area we don't spend much time about. So now that we're in the second quarter, spring of the year, we look at how the lion can attack those who are new in faith. And again, as we use the seasons in our theme, we're not so much talking about age as we are spirituality. So someone could be 60 years old, but just kind of new in their faith with the Lord. And so we looked at how the devil does this, and we brought up examples of like Jesus. Right after he was baptized, he was led away into the wilderness, and there he was tempted. Our baptism doesn't end things. Sometimes it introduces and encourages more things from the devil. We looked at Acts 8, Simon, the sorcerer. Right after he was baptized, he got caught up in all kinds of wrong attitudes and sins. And again, it's just a reminder how Satan can do that to us. And so we basically brought it down to three simple points. He does that by not making a clean break from the world. I call that the curse of the worldly influence. We use the analogy of keeping your foot in water. You dangle your foot in water. You're diluting your faith. You're not starting strong. And the two specifics we looked at is drinking alcohol and sex outside of marriage. Those two really trouble a lot of people today, and they need to see what Bible teaches about that. Second area we talked about is by needing the approval of others, the curse of social media. I have to have people support me, like me, and defend me. And that creates a faith in others more than the God. And that never creates your own faith. This is what I believe, because if my friends don't agree with it, then I can't go there. And then the third area we talked about is distancing yourself from spiritual authority, the curse of arrogance. And by thinking that I don't need to be submissive, I don't need to follow what others say, I have no spiritual mentors in my life, all of those will plague a person. And we need to realize Satan has different tactics. What he'll get to one Christian, he'll do to a different way to a different Christian. And all of those remind us of how important that is. We ended the lesson with 4 questions about the questionable. Will I need to keep it a secret? Why do I keep it a secret? If it's not wrong, then I don't need to keep it a secret. Will it lead me closer to the Lord? Will it present the best side of me? And is this what the Lord wants me to do? And all those help us when we think about tough decisions and choices, listening to our friends, and all those things that sometimes trip us up as we think about our journey with the Lord.
The sermon is called Lions in the Spring. It's freely available there at charlestownroad.org, in our sermon podcast feed, our YouTube channel. Lots of ways to access that really important body of teaching, and we appreciate that very, very much, Roger. I figured here in the middle of the week, one of the basic points that really you used to introduce the whole thing, you made the statement, Satan sees the great potential that is in the heart of new faith. Of course, we are in the springtime of the year. We're focused on the spring of faith, new faith. And so I thought that was a great statement, maybe just to drill down into a little, this great potential that is in the heart of new faith. When you, Roger, think of that great potential, what sort of things go through your mind?
Well, you think about someone that just stays with it. Maybe they are a young person, or maybe they're just a young family. They're in their 20s or early 30s, but they start this journey with the Lord, and they stay with it, and they stay with it, and they stay with it. Their faith gets stronger. It's like that little seedling, and at first, the wind blows, and it looks like that little thing's going to snap in half, but through the years it gets bigger and bigger, and one day it's a mighty oak tree, just solid as it can be. That's the upside potential. The idea of decades of serving the Lord. The idea of all the people later on down the road that this person can influence for the Lord. This person may become a Bible class teacher. This person may serve as a deacon or shepherd in the kingdom of God. This person may open their home to just dozens and dozens of people. I've had some contact recently with a man who's in his high 80s, and he's doing prison ministry. And you think about all those years. Now, a person doesn't start off that way, not when they're new in their faith, but you put decades and decades of faith behind somebody and all the things that they can do. It's just unbelievable. And not only that, but just one's own family. You raise your children right, they follow the Lord, they get married and have children, they raise them right. You can have generations of followers of Jesus Christ. And so Satan sees that. And he sees that, right now this person is young. You might think, well, there's not much he can do for the kingdom. But Satan can look down the road too. And he can see that if I don't stop this now, this could be a lot of trouble later on, because this person can really be a strong and powerful Christian. I think that's some of the things we have to see.
Yeah. And of course, you followed that statement up with, if Satan can stop that progress, he'll have much later to do later on, or much less to do later on. As I was thinking about that just prior to this conversation, you think of biblical examples like Joseph. Joseph, probably an older teenager, roughly right around there when he is carried down to Egypt and tempted by the wife of Potiphar. How different the Bible story would have been if Satan could have stopped Joseph's progress at a very young age. Or you think of Daniel, carried away from his home in Judea as a very young man. And if somehow right there in the early, maybe just Daniel chapter 1, if Satan can stop that progress, how different not just the story of that book is, but in many ways the conclusion of the Old Testament, maybe the rest of the Bible. Now, the point is powerful because, of course, Joseph had absolutely no clue whatsoever that thousands of years on the other side of the globe, here you and I would be talking about him, or a Martha or a Mary, whoever you want to pick out that was relatively young in Scripture and yet has a heart of faith. You think of young Timothy and what Paul sees in him. Satan sees the great potential that is in the heart of new faith. I think your point is powerful, even when maybe we don't recognize it. And if he can stop that progress, how different not only is that individual life, but untold lives and potential and opportunity down the line.
And we see this in the natural world. I do a lot of gardening, and you got this little bitty weed. Sometimes you can just pull it up with your hands. Then I get some of these wild trees growing, and I can pull, and I can't get it up. I have to get a shovel and dig. It's a lot harder because the roots are there. And that's what we're talking about. And so if Satan can stop it before those roots get deep, before you become strong in Christ, and before you can impact and influence other people, then there's a lot less work he has to do. who is to know down the road what person you may influence to become a Christian? I mean, when David was just a shepherd boy out there watching the sheep of his father, I don't think in his wildest mind he would have thought someday I'm going to be the king of this nation. Yeah. He was a last boy of a no-name family, of a small tribe, and you'd think there's no way he could become king of Israel, but he did. And you think about now, we sometimes point out the wrongs in David's life, but you think about all the good that David did. That kingdom was the largest under David. That kingdom was the most wealthy under David. David brought peace to the kingdom. Before that, during the times of the judges and the time of King Saul, the Philistines were always harassing Israel. David put an end to that. And so, but what would have happened way back had the devil got a hold of David when he was just that teenage boy out in the shepherd fields and he no longer believed in the Lord? You see, all the good, all the things that come about. And so when we come to the New Testament, Jesus Christ is considered the son of David. He's considered that reign that belongs to David. And so the devil, as well as the Lord, sees this upside potential. He sees the progress that can take place. And he'll try to stop it early because it's a lot easier to do that. We see that with housework. I mean, it's a lot easier to clean up a little mess than it's clean up a big mess. And that's what the devil's trying to do by tempting us and getting us off track and discouraging us in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I thought your 3 points, especially for young people, really important to think about, not just here in the middle of the week, but as a teenager, as someone maybe who is just within the next few days going to graduate high school and this is their last summer at home. Maybe they're going to travel a long ways away from home for college, but you hear this call to make a clean break with the world. That is such an important thing for a young person to decide right now in order to maximize this potential and allow those roots to dig down deep. By living for the approval of others. That is a very real challenge, especially in those older ages or older years of high school, and most especially if we leave the foundation that we've had and go off to college, distancing yourself from spiritual authority. Roger, you and I both have seen far too many young people who will move away from home, but then not become active members of a local church. And as a result, okay, I'm not really accountable to anyone in my immediate area. Nobody knows whether or not I'm getting up and honoring the Lord on the Lord's Day. Nobody knows whether or not I'm devoting time throughout the week to Bible study, to fellowship. I'm just kind of floating, and I've got all sorts of freedom right there in the moment, but I've distanced myself from authority and accountability. The roots aren't growing, and to your very good point, I am in great spiritual danger.
Yeah, and what happens is 4 years later, you walk across the stage with a degree in your hand, but there's no faith in your heart. And in a lot of settings, you're going to be bombarded with things you've never seen and heard before as you're in dorms with people who have no guidance, who have no compass whatsoever. They'll do anything, and you're going to be introduced to those things. If you don't have a foundation, it's going to rock you a little bit. You're going to be sitting in classrooms where people who have a lot of letters after their names will be mocking God, mocking the Bible, and the pressure is going to be upon you to am I going to stand up and say I still believe in God, or am I going to just kind of cower under and think, well, this guy's smart, he's written a book, so it must be true, and just throw away everything I believe. Now, This even happens when people go to religious schools too.
Yeah.
Don't think, well, I'm sending my child or I'm heading off to a religious school and so I'm okay. No, every year in these religious schools, kids are sent home before the semester ends because they have either flunked out or they have completely bottomed out spiritually. They've gotten themselves in trouble and then they are kicked out of school. And so these things are very real. And as a parent, it's still not too late. You need to be thinking about what congregation is my kid going to go to when he's away in school. You ought to, as a parent, get there and attend it yourself. You ought to give your kid's name and where he's going to be at to some people in that church so they can look after him. So you may be far away, but there may be things that come up and your kid may need some help once in a while. And the people of the church can be the ones that can help you. All of these things are things that need to be done and be done before you show up and say, guess what? There's no church in town. Yeah. That's bad news. That's so bad news. And for so many, the college years is the death of their faith. And it doesn't have to be. The college years can be a great time for you to grow, bring other people to the Lord, impact other people. It's during those college years that's a good likelihood you're going to find somebody you're going to maybe spend the rest of your life with. How you are spiritually is going to determine a lot of that. And so these are some very, very important decisions that mom and dad need to get down with their child. And just having a full ride, just having a scholarship doesn't say, well, this is where you're going. You need to look at things spiritually because 4 years without God is enough to kill all faith. And so we have to consider those things.
Yeah. Hard to imagine when you're a junior or senior in high school with this potential in mind that, okay, by the time I am out of this season, I may be married to a person I've pledged myself to for the rest of my life. There may be children who come as a result of that relationship, all sorts of relationships that perhaps I will have for the rest of my life, formed over the course of the next few years. That is great potential, but Satan sees that great potential in the heart of new faith, and if he can stop that progress, untold potential is just absolutely lost. It was a very sobering but a very good reminder, a call to self-control right into the heart of the sermon. I appreciated, Roger, how you drew out the consumption of alcohol, sexual immorality outside of marriage. Potential is tied to self-control. And that is something we don't wait until we're 30 or 40 or 50 years old to get serious about. If we do, those roots have not matured, and it is in many ways too late to undo what will have been done as a result of that lack of self-control. And so just all the way around, a good warning, a good call to realize that potential. The sermon is called Lions in the Spring, and again, freely available at charlestownroad.org. We've got the opportunity to continue to grow in our faith and our potential even this evening at 7 o'clock p.m. Roger, you're going to be teaching in the auditorium.
Yes, we're going through 2 Peter 1, the section we call the graces or the virtues of a Christian. Tonight is add godliness.
Excellent. In our building blocks track of studies, we're talking about learning to pray from the Psalms. We're going to notice how often in the Psalms we hear David or others praying to God, would you lead me? Looking for God's leading and incorporating that into our prayers. This Sunday morning, Lord willing, at 9:30 a.m., I have the opportunity to preach a sermon I had planned on preaching this past Sunday evening. That didn't work out, and so we're going to look this Sunday morning, Lord willing, at 9:30 a.m. at a basic but really important question. Was Peter the first Pope. What can we learn about the church's leadership from the New Testament, the story of Peter, and why does that matter for us even today? Roger, what about at 5 o'clock p.m.?
We're going to take a lesson from the page of Moses, and we're going to talk about keeping faith through the storms. And I think it'll be something that will fit to a lot of us.
Excellent. Roger, thanks for joining me today. And of course, thanks to all of you for listening to This Week at Charlestown Road. It would be great to see you this evening at 7 o'clock p.m. We're already looking forward to Sunday, the best day of the week, and we would love to have you come and grow with us.